people have on television. I watch these experts, and it's clown hour. Okay, these are people that have focused their entire career on the Middle East or some other part of the world because that's where all the action was. Very few of them know anything about Venezuela or the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela looks nothing like Libya. It looks nothing like Iraq. It looks nothing like Afghanistan. It looks nothing like the Middle East, other than the Iranian agents that are running through there plotting against America. Okay? These are Western countries with long traditions among their at a people-to-people and cultural level and ties to the United States. So there's nothing like that. So I think people need to stop ascribing the apples and oranges here, the apples of the Middle East to the oranges of the Western Hemisphere.
But do you...
Number two, this is about the national interest of the United States. And what I'm confident of is we are in a safer and better place because we're taking it seriously. The alternative would have been to leave Maduro there as an indicted drug trafficker, illegitimate president, running the country, open invitation for all of our adversaries to do whatever they want against the United States from Venezuela. That was not going to continue. The alternative would have been to allow a drug trafficker to continue to use national territory and elements of nation-state power to further drug trafficking organizations. Read the indictment. This guy used the levers of their security apparatus not to arrest drug traffickers, but to cooperate and facilitate the trafficking of drugs for the purpose of getting them into the United States.
What's up, family? So we got to talk about our big dog, big Marco Rubio, right? Yes, I said big because Lil Marco, he graduated. So the man got promoted in my eyes because right now he's out here doing interviews with these mainstream liberal media types. You know, the ones always trying to act like they know more than everybody, trying to throw shade on anything that ain't blue. And he's absolutely schooling them, just wrecking them with facts and clarity about what the Trump administration just pulled off in Venezuela. And let me tell you, this wasn't just a win. This was a W with fireworks, confetti, and victory music. And I mean, you know it's real when you got all these United States leftists crying on the timeline, complaining about oil and intervention. And while actual Venezuelans, real people who've been suffering under a socialist dictator, are in the streets celebrating like they just got their country back. And that should tell you everything you need to know right there. When the people inside the country are cheering and the people who've never even been there are mad. Yeah, somebody's lying and it ain't the Venezuelans, right? I want to break this down for folks who don't follow politics like that. And what just happened is under Trump's administration with Rubio playing a key role, the United States ran a covert, that means secret, quiet, and under the radar military operation. They went into Venezuela and captured Nicolas Maduro. That's the guy who's been running the country into the ground. He's basically the Venezuela version of a mob boss in a presidential palace. And if you think of him like a cartel leader dressed up like a politician, stealing from his own people, starving them, locking them up, pure corruption, right? So now here's the genius part. They didn't just go in guns blazing, overthrow the whole government, tear everything down like we did in Iraq or Libya. Nah, that would have caused chaos, right? And we've been down that road before. And instead, they took the top guy, the ringleader, the cancer at the core, and left the rest of the system intact for now. So the whole thing don't collapse in a pile of dust. Because listen, you can't run a country if everything falls apart overnight. You need structure. You need water still flowing. You need somebody to turn the lights on while the transition is happening. And that's why they didn't go and arrest everybody in the regime. It's strategy. It's like cutting off the head, but leaving the body alive just enough, long enough to put a new brain in. And of course, the liberal news anchors, they ain't trying to hear all that. They are out here crying about oil. Oh no, America's stealing oil. Like, bro, stop. But don't take my word for it. I want you guys to see Marco Rubio actually respond before we get to the actual video to break it down even more of him responding to these liberals or liberologists, I like to say, because they're such apologists when it comes to their nonsense ideologies they worship, even at the cost of America and American values, let alone American lives and American people. They should have the best interest of, but we know they don't like to uphold the truth. So check it out.
The purpose of the operation was to capture Maduro and bring him to justice. Why does the United States need to take over the Venezuelan oil industry?
Well, we don't need to. First of all, let me go back up. We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil companies?
We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it. Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela since 2014 because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
Shout out to the big dog, man. That's big dog Mark. Man, look. Everybody's crying. The liberals are, oh no, America's stealing oil. Like I said, bro, stop. Because first of all, everything in geopolitics is about resources. But I find something interesting that he said. He said the simple fact that we are not about to sit here and let it happen in our backyard. But he also said, look, these liberals are sitting here defending a narco dictator. And now these liberologists want to be so apologetic with this enabling behavior. And you had Nicolas Maduro basically starving the economy of Venezuela, let alone starving Venezuelans. And at the cost of the very people, the constituents in Venezuela, him worshiping his own ideologies as a dictator and running things not on the best interest of Venezuelans, but on his own self-interest and ideologies. And basically running the country to the ground at his own benefit at the detriment of the people. And doesn't that sound familiar when it comes to these hypocrites or these Democrats when they sit there and they act like they're for affordability and they tell you what you want to hear and they don't care to hold the truth, even if they have said something hypocritical in the past from yesteryear, and then you hold them accountable for now because the internet is forever and we have receipts now. They don't care because they'd rather worship their ideologies instead of upholding the best interests of Americans. Doesn't that sound familiar as these Democrats and these mainstream liberal media sit here and defend freeing a narco dictator like Nicolas Maduro? Sounds familiar. Both individuals defend ideology, socialism, everybody's equal, everything is for everybody. But wait until you don't agree with these Democrats or even ask them or dare to ask them a question or hold them accountable. They will gut you like a fish. Not literally, but metaphorically in terms of they won't even care to look your way or spit on you if you are on fire because they never care because at the cost of lying to Americans and not having their best interest, they'll sit there and put a facade on like they care about you, but in reality they don't, while you sit there and suffer and they get rich off of your suffering. See, they create the very problem that they act like they got the solution from. For decades, the Democrat Party has run the country for 20 plus years, right? And what has gotten better? And now these woke these ideologies got so far that now you're sitting here defending a narco dictator who sat there and ran Venezuela to the ground due to his own ideologies he worshiped and not his own people. And the Democrats are doing the same thing. That's why they're sitting here supporting that this man be freed. And you guys need to open your eyes and wake up and pay attention because the very people such as the constituents, aka Venezuelans, are cheering that they are finally in prison, free from being imprisoned, and jailed, and being controlled by such a dictator. They finally feel free in freedom to actually enjoy the beauty and luxuries of their country. So the question is, why are Venezuelans happy and these liberocrats are so mad? It tells you they don't care about the best interest of Americans. Because if one country, such as their constituents, are happy that they're free, and the Democrats are pushing for the dictator to be free, for the constituents to suffer again, what do you think they'll do at the cost of Americans if they're already lying to you like they care, but at the cost of them being caught and held accountable for their lies, they still don't take accountable, and that tells you right there they don't care, right? And before now that we get to him chewing up and schooling these mainstream media fools, Marco Rubio, big dog Marco. I want to talk about something, right? Because we are enforcing with the Trump administration, and Trump said it so beautifully, the Monroe Doctrine. And let me break that down because I know a lot of folks don't even know what that means. The Monroe Doctrine is basically the old school United States policy that says, yo, the Western Hemisphere is our block. That's why Marco said it's not going to happen in our backyard, not in this administration. Right? Because think of it like neighborhood rules. You don't let outsiders come in and run game on your turf. Europe, China, Russia, y'all handle y'all areas. And the Americas are our business. So when we step in to stabilize or check something that goes sideways in Latin America, that's not new. That's just the United States acting like the OGs of the neighborhood, making sure the block don't go lawless. And I'm going to say that again. Don't go lawless for the people in the back. And Rubio, he's been the architect of how we bring that doctrine into the 21st century. My man ain't just tweeting and giving speeches. He's helping design the whole foreign policy move. That's execution. That's leadership. And I got to say, bro, little Marco ain't little no more. He big Marco. He big dog. And real talk, I support him being one at the top of the run for president in 2028 as a Republican candidate, right? And look, I know a lot of individuals are supporting JD Vance and JD Vance runs. And I know Marco is also condoning and supporting, and he'll step aside and support JD Vance if he runs, which low key sounds like, he could potentially be vice president, like JD Marco ticket is already in the works. But honestly, I think Rubio, he got the sauce, he got the juice to go all the way to the top. Right? And that's not to discredit JD. JD could be president next time. Why? And I say that because why? I don't just like people who talk smooth. And I'm not saying JD Vance won't execute. I like people who get the job done. And he already showing it, right? With Venezuela. And JD, phenomenal communicator. Communicates effectively. Man is a beast on a mic. Tackle every single mainstream liberal media when it came to Trump running up for election and campaigning, and Trump sent them out there to attack the little dogs, JD, right? When it came to these mainstream liberal medias, he went on every single mainstream liberal media outlet, right? But when it comes to pulling off missions like this, Marco Rubio, Ron DeSantis over there in Florida, shout out to them having no state taxes. I love it. They are doers. They ain't just talkers. And the Republican Party needs that, right? We don't need another guy giving poetic speeches. And we need someone who can walk into a global crisis and handle it like a CEO walking into a boardroom. And now Rubio basically acting president of Venezuela right now. But let's get into this, man.
He also said the U.S. is ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. But I'm curious because you just described the regime as still in place, essentially. I mean, I'm curious why the Trump administration decided to leave it intact and only arrest Nicolas Maduro and his wife, the person who controls the police, the chief thug, Cabello. He's the interior minister. He's been indicted by the United States. He was in that indictment the administration released. He's a narco terrorist. There's a $25 million price on his head. He's still in place. The defense minister, who has deep ties to Russia, $15 million price on his head. He is still in place. I'm confused. Are they still wanted by the United States? Why didn't you arrest them if you are taking out the narco terrorist regime?
You're confused? I don't know why that's confusing to you.
They're still in
I mean,
power.
It's very simple. You're not going to go in and wrap up. But you can't go. You're going to go in and suck up 5 people. They're already complaining about this one operation. Imagine the howls we would have from everybody else if we actually had to go and stay there 4 days to capture 4 other.
That was a dumb, ignorant question. That's why the first line of being a journalist, Miss Journalist with the purple dress. Listen first.
Other people. We got the top priority. The number 1 person on the list was the guy who claimed to be the president of the country that he was not, and he was arrested along with his wife, who was also indicted. And that was a pretty sophisticated and frankly complicated operation.
It was.
It is not easy to land helicopters in the middle of the largest military base in the country. The guy lived on a military base. Land within 3 minutes, kick down his door, grab him, put him in handcuffs, read him his rights, put him in a helicopter, and leave the country without losing any American or any American assets. That's not an easy mission. And you're asking me, why didn't we do that in 5 other places at the same time? I mean, that's absurd. I do think this is one of the most, daring, complicated, sophisticated missions this country has carried out in a very long time. Tremendous credit to the U.S. military personnel who did it. It was unbelievable. And tremendous success. And today, an indicted drug trafficker who was not the legitimate president of Venezuela, who we don't recognize, the Biden administration didn't recognize, 60-something countries don't recognize, the European Union doesn't recognize, and many countries in Latin America don't recognize. He was a indicted drug trafficker. He was arrested. His wife was arrested, also
but the
indicted, and they are now
others who are also indicted are still
system of courts.
The others who.
I'm gonna stop it right there. We gotta give him a round of applause, man. We gotta give him a round of applause because what Rubio is basically acting like the president of Venezuela right now. No cap. The man looked like he ain't slept in 90 days. But he's still finding time to hop on TV, lay out exactly what the Trump administration is doing, breaking it down in a way these liberal media anchors can't refute. And he's trying to bring peace, stability, and long-term order to Venezuela without blowing the place up. That's chess, not checkers. And shout out to everybody, all my veterans. Shout out to all my servicemen and women. You guys are phenomenal. I appreciate you for all that you do, all that your service for us Americans, and enjoy the luxuries that we have. It's such a blessing. And you guys sacrificing and doing what you do phenomenally. But some of these anchors, some of them, or these anchors, I should say, asking dumb questions like, what was the plan? What's next? And I got to stop you right there because, first of all, it's stupid. It's ignorant. And if you've been paying attention, first of all, you don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. You don't need to ask if you actually understand how this works. And why would they sit here and tell you what's next? Like enemies ain't watching. Are you really that anti-American on top of being dumb? Because the reality is, and let me know if I'm tripping, family. Comment down below. Like this video if you got this far in the video. I appreciate you for rocking with me. But what I'm saying is, they acting like we just dropped in there on a whim. Like, nah, this is phase 1 of a multi-phase operation. The goal ain't just arrest Maduro and bounce. The goal is to transition power gradually in a way that don't lead to a civil war or a total power vacuum. That takes time. That takes nuance. That takes not being dumb. See, what Rubio's doing, what this whole administration is doing, is they're saying, yo, we here now. The party's over. Y'all had your chance. We took out the top dog, but we ain't here to destroy everything. We want a peaceful transition, but don't get it twisted. Y'all saw what just happened to Maduro now. Anyone else who wants to test us, step up and see what happens. That's what power looks like. That's how you avoid war, by showing you don't want one, but you ready if. See, you always want to let your opponent know that you got options, but they don't know what is going to happen with what option you may go with or use. That's why you don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. So to ask this dumbass question talking about what's the plan, what's next? It's self-explanatory. And don't get it twisted. This ain't like Iraq or Afghanistan. Venezuelans ain't trying to blow us up. They want our help. They waving U.S. flags, baby. They want democracy. They want freedom. They want food, jobs, order. Things we take for granted here in the United States. well, these liberologists, these left extreme woke lunatics, right? So this ain't a hostile occupation. This is a rescue mission with benefits on both sides, right? Now, I want to talk about this woman who's now an acting president, the vice president under Maduro. But before I get there, let's continue to watch.
Who are also indicted are still in place. So that's the point of my questioning there. But you talked about not being the legitimate
So you wanted
president.
us to land in 5 other military bases?
No, I'm asking why you chose that this was the limit of the military operation. But to your point that you just made, that, that Maduro was not the legitimate president.
He was the guy who was claiming to be the president.
Right. Well, the opposition.
He was the top target.
Okay. The opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez, won that 2024 election by your own account. They were some of the first people you called when you were Secretary of State. You said Edmundo Gonzalez is the rightful president of Venezuela. Is that still the U.S. policy? And if so, are you working on a transition to have those elected leaders run the country?
Well, I think a couple things. I have tremendous admiration for Maria Corina Machado. I have admiration for Edmundo. We have all those views about what the election that happened the last time, and not only us, but many other countries around the world. There's that. And there's the mission we are on right now. We have been very clear from the beginning, because I still think that a lot of people analyze everything that happens in foreign policy through the lens of what happened from 2001 to 2015 or 16. The whole, foreign policy apparatus thinks everything is Libya, everything is Iraq, everything is Afghanistan. This is not the Middle East. And our mission here is very different. This is the Western Hemisphere. Within the Western Hemisphere, we have a country, potentially a very rich country, that has cozied itself up under the control of this regime, has cozied up to Iran, has cozied up to Hezbollah, has allowed narco trafficking gangs to operate with impunity from their own territory, allows boats with drugs to traffic from their territory, and we are addressing that. And by the way, 9 million people in the largest mass migration event in modern history have left that country since 2014.
But that regime is still in
having
place.
An impact on us. That is what we are addressing now.
When you spoke yesterday,
but we're not just addressing the regime. We are addressing the factors that are a threat to the national interest of the United States.
Understood. You spoke with Delcy Rodriguez, who is now, according to President Trump, sworn in as the president, as the leader of Venezuela. Did she promise you that she is expelling all those American adversaries from Venezuelan territory? What exactly did she agree to do when she spoke to you?
We are going to, our objectives when it comes to how Venezuela impacts the national interest of the United States have not changed, and we want those addressed. We want drug trafficking to stop. We want no more gang members to come our way. We don't want to see the Iranian, and by the way, Cuban presence in the past. We want the oil industry in that country not to go to the benefit of pirates and adversaries of the United States, but for the benefit of the people. We want to see all of that happen. We insist on seeing that happen.
Did she
and
promise
we are
that?
going to work to continue to see that happen.
All right, family. Well, let's talk about this woman who's now an acting president, the vice president under Maduro. The liberal media is pretending she has a choice whether or not to work with us. She doesn't. She's not in control. We are, period. It don't matter what she says in public. Behind the scenes, trust me, she's cooperating because the message is clear. Either you work with us or you're going to end up just like the last guy, Maduro. And that ain't a threat. That's reality. And look, no shade to her. Sure, she's a respectful, nice, cooperative lady. Probably loves her country. But let's keep it real. Venezuela don't need a soft, smiley figurehead right now. They need someone like, how can I put it? The president of El Salvador, right? Who got that bulldog energy, right? Locked up the gangs, cleaned up the streets, made his country safe again. That's what Venezuela needs. Somebody with guts, somebody with backbone, not someone trying to make peace with the criminals. And that's why you can't rush the transition. You can't just install a new leader tomorrow. You got to do it right. Let the Venezuelan people decide. Yeah, eventually. But you guide them, nudge them, push them in the right direction. Help them make the smart choice. Because if they pick wrong again, all this was for nothing. Now listen, I ain't saying everything is guaranteed to go smooth. This could still go sideways. Could be violence. Could be fallout. We ain't psychic here. We ain't psychic. But everything we're seeing from the administration the calm, the precision, the strategy tells me they learned from the past mistakes. This ain't Iraq 2.0. This is smarter, cleaner, smoother, and Marco Rubio is at the center of it all. So shout out to him, right? And if this works, bro, Marco Rubio becomes a legend. Like legit. If this plan holds and Venezuela stabilizes, we got access to oil and they got a functioning democracy. And people can live decent lives again. You heard him say, oh, we got plenty of oil in America. But that's a W for everybody. It's about dominance. When have it not been about getting resources, right? And everybody eats and builds each other up peacefully, right? That's the whole point of European nations and the world trade, right? We may not like each other, but we be fair and we trade amongst each other to lift each other up. And look, if you look at it, don't let anyone guilt trip you about oil as a country, United States. Would you rather have people starving while sitting on top of riches, or a country where everybody eats and the U.S. secures energy stability? Win-win. So yeah, call it what you want, but let's continue.
Well, right now, we are going to see what happens moving forward. Let me just say that. I'm not obviously going to have these conversations in the media. These are delicate and complicated things that require mature statesmanship, and that's what we intend to do. But our goals remain the same. The difference is that the person who was in charge, even though not legitimately, in the past was someone you could not work with. We just could not work with him. He is not a person that had ever kept any of the deals he made. Broke every deal he ever made a fool out of the Biden administration on the deal they made with him. And we offered him on multiple occasions an opportunity to remove himself from the scene in a positive way. He chose not to do so.
But his number two is now running the country. His number two is someone you can work with. And is that what you're implying here? And did she tell you that she will transition to democracy? And the woman who won the election along with her partner there, Maria Corina Machado.
We are going to make our assessments of people. You're asking me to make an assessment. We're going to make an assessment on the basis of what they do, not what they say publicly in the interim, not what what they've done in the past in many cases, but what they do moving forward. So we're going to find out. You're asking me, do I know what decisions people are going to make? I don't. I do know this, that if they don't make the right decisions, the United States will retain multiple levers of leverage to ensure that our interests are protected. And that includes the oil quarantine that's in place, among other things. Well, and but we are going to judge moving forward. We're going to judge everything by what they do. And we're going to see what they do.
Okay, because yesterday President Trump said Maria Corina Machado doesn't have the support or respect within the country. And by your own admission, she walloped Nicolas Maduro in the last election. So it does sound like a decision was made. But
she wasn't on the ballot in the last election.
No, but her party was.
Edmundo was.
Yes.
Correct.
So
it was an illegitimate election, and that's why he's not a legitimate president.
Right, but is there an agreement to transition to democracy?
There you have it. It wasn't a legitimate election because Maduro wasn't elected as president. He used his power and his cronies. So technically, the vice president under Maduro right now, she was not in a ballot in the last election because it was illegitimate. So she's saying right, but then she's saying she was in the election, but she really wasn't because it was a legitimate election because Maduro wasn't truly elected. So how can you actually say his vice president, who's taking place now, is legit? She's not. But no matter how you want to put it, she hasn't really proven herself, right? Like I say, I'm sure she's a nice, objective lady. Loves Venezuela, loves the country, our country, right?
Democracy,
I think what the
like
president pointed out is the obvious. Well, I think what the point, but there has to be a little realism here, okay? A transition to they've had this regime, they've had this system of Chavismo in place for 15 or 16 years. And everyone's asking why 24 hours after Nicolas Maduro was arrested, there isn't an election scheduled for tomorrow? That's absurd.
I'm asking what you talked about with her.
These things take time. There's a process.
Right. And you
well, I'm not going to publicly get into details about any of those things other than to tell you that our expectations remain the same. And we are going to judge whoever we're interacting with moving forward by whether or not those conditions are met. Of course we want to see Venezuela transition to be a place completely different than what it looks like today. But obviously, we don't have the expectation that's going to happen in the next 15 hours. What we do have an expectation is that it move in that direction. We think it's in our national interest and, frankly, in the interest of people of Venezuela.
The president used the word oil 20 times in his press conference. You talked about these tremendous oil assets that Venezuela has. But the president's last envoy to Venezuela, Elliot Abrams, is publicly arguing that you know better than the policy you're backing. He said, quote, Venezuelan plutocrats or U.S. oil executives seem to be coming to Mar-a-Lago and whispering about how easy life would be if we just made a deal with the regime once Maduro was gone. Is that what happened here?
No, that's not what happened here. What happened here is that we arrested a narco trafficker who's now going to stand trial in the United States for the crimes he's committed against our people for 15 years. And the person who helped him, of course, his wife, who was co-located with him, so she was arrested as well. That's what happened here. As far as oil, look, oil is critical, not just to fueling economies all over the world. It's critical to Venezuela's future. Their oil industry is completely destroyed. It's destroyed all those oil fields that used to produce a lot and wealth for their country and their people. Those things are decrepit. They're bankrupt. They need to be reinvested in. It's obvious. They do not have the capability to bring up that industry again. They need investment from private companies who are only going to invest under certain guarantees and conditions. That has to go to the benefit of the Venezuelan people. Right now, all of that wealth is stolen. It's stolen and it goes into the hands of oligarchs around the world and the oligarchs inside of Venezuela. A handful of people benefit from it. The people don't benefit from it. On top of that, it's very simple, okay? In the 21st century, under the Trump administration, we are not going to have a country like Venezuela in our own hemisphere, in the sphere of control and the crossroads for Hezbollah, for Iran, and for every other malign influence in the world. That's just not going to exist.
Marco Rubio, Secretary of State.
There you have it, family. At the end of the day, he has a point. They don't have the engineers. They don't have the capability, let alone logic, to even know how to rebuild their infrastructure when it comes to extracting oil, and which made them a booming economy when it once was back in the 70s and 80s, as Venezuela used to be. And the thing is, of course, we're going to want a return on investment. Who wouldn't want an ROI, right? When we're sitting here paying millions and millions of dollars to build back up their infrastructure because Nicolas Maduro wants to sit there and his cronies and destroy things and be a socialist, a dictator socialist who basically wants everything ran under his control. And if any of his constituents, any of Venezuelans disagree with him, he will starve them. Not a narco dictator for no reason, right? Because his power, he used his power to protect corruption and drug trafficking while crushing his own people. Under his rule, top officials in the government and military have been linked by investigators to moving cocaine to Venezuela and United States, right? And he was charged back in 2020 himself with being with narcotics and related crimes that dealt with narcotics, so to say, or narco-related crimes, put it like that, saying he helped crimes in exchange for money and power. And at the same time, his security forces have been accused of daily crackdowns, torture, fake arrests, and silencing journalists and political opponents instead of fixing problems. So when people use that term, that's why he is a narco dictator, right? He acted like a dictator, controlling courts, elections, and the police while allowing criminal networks to thrive, leaving ordinary Venezuelans poorer, more afraid, and with almost no voice in their own country, right? So you have to realize how all this is played out. And when you look at this type of thing, he was moving like an authoritarian, which is a government where one leader or a small group has most of the power. In this case, Maduro and his cartel gang members, right? And people don't really get to challenge them or freely disagree, because if that happens, the elections, they exist, but they aren't really fair. The government controls media or punish critics. Opposition leaders get harassed, jailed, or banned. And then you got like the courts and the police and military answer mainly to the ruler, and people are afraid to speak out because they'll get punished. And I'll give you an example, right? Because in a democracy, the leaders can lose power if people vote them out, and criticism is allowed. In an authoritarian system, leaders try to stay in power no matter what, even if people don't want them there, right? So democracy, the government works for the people. Authoritarian, the people must obey the government. And that's how Nicolas Maduro was operating. For example, if you disagree with him, he would do a heinous acts in regards of not only would he take the food, or not only would he condone his scarcity, but let's say you agree with his politics, he would starve you. Plain and simple, right? And that's how he continued to do the fear mongering and things like that. Now, when it comes to us, Marco Rubio is saying that we're going to go in to fix the oil infrastructure because a stable oil system keeps Venezuela from collapsing. And when you look at it, Venezuela's economy runs almost entirely on oil, and years of mismanagement left pipelines, refineries, equipment broken or barely working. And if their oil industry completely fails, the country suffers deep into poverty and more people flee towards the United States. Crime and instability spread through the region, and other countries like Russia or China, we know to take over Africa or step in to control the oil instead in Venezuela and vouch and continue to root to take over Venezuela. We know China is known for doing it. So by helping get their oil production back online in a safer, more organized way, what Marco Rubio is saying is the United States is trying to stabilize the country, reduce chaos, and lower pressure on our borders, and secure a more reliable energy partner in the future while avoiding an even bigger crisis later. Like I said, of course, we're going to want a return on investment. We're about to put millions and millions of dollars in helping build their infrastructure. They don't have the engineers, they don't have the knowledge and capability to do it on their own, right? And Maduro messed that up, right? He wrecked the economy with bad policies. He printed tons of money to pay government bills instead of fixing problems. That caused hyperinflation. Prices exploded. People's savings became worthless. Salaries couldn't buy food. And then he put heavy controls on everything. He said strict socialism, right? He said price controls and took over private businesses. Stores stopped selling because they couldn't make money. So shelves went empty. Farmers stopped producing because they couldn't profit. And then he mismanaged the oil energy, right? Industry, right? Venezuela depends on oil. Like I said, Maduro replaced experienced engineers with loyal political friends. Let equipment fall apart and stole money through corruption. Oil production collapsed, and so did the country's main source of income. So call it what you want. I call it leadership on Marco Rubio and I call it execution. If Marco Rubio keeps moving like this, bro, he's on a short list for the White House, period. But make sure you like, comment, subscribe, man. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is Big Marco, him for real or nah? Let's talk about it. Catch you in the next one. As always, we having a conversation. Let the love supersede the hate. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Peace.